Hey, Canucks fans, we are back with another Zoom chat. And I thought, given how busy the Canucks have been over the past week or two, no one better to bring in than one of my good friends. And actually, I met him through one of our mutual friends, my season ticket partner, Mike. Please say hello to Patrick Johnston, also known as Rising Action on Twitter. Patrick, thanks for being here, man.
What's up, buddy? Isn't it really the other way around? Like we realized we knew Mike in common after you and I got to know each other on Twitter, and
That's true. I think we both wanted to deny knowing him, actually, now that I think about it.
The worst teacher in Richmond, right? Poor kids. Those poor kids stuck with McBurney.
So
no,
hold on.
Great teacher. No. Be clear, Mike McBurney and I were student teachers together at Burnett years ago. And unfortunately you guys also know each other, so it's just it's that Richmond connection. You can't escape anyone in Richmond.
Well, with the mention of Burnett, you've already endeared yourself to me, Patrick, not that you needed to. I'm going to call you PJ. It's just easier. That's what I'm used to. And yes, we have a great mutual friend. You taught with Mike, and Mike, for those of you watching my channel, you guys know that I talk about my season ticket partner, Mike, a lot. He's the one who teaches me about hockey, brought me into the season tickets, and protects me on the roller hockey rink. Let's put it that way. So you were not teaching anymore. Tell us about the work that you do.
Well, I'm a journalist. I obviously cover the Canucks for the province and the Sun. 8 years now at the province. Wow. About 10 years ago, I was liking teaching. I liked it. I was pretty good at it. I didn't love it. And I sort of found myself in a position to think about what I wanted to be, where I wanted to go. And this is so long ago, but I was sitting there watching the news, like watching CNN, and there's Anderson Cooper in Egypt. It was the Arab Spring. That's what winter 2011, spring of 2011. And I all of a sudden clicked. I was like, oh my God, maybe journalism is what I should be talking about. And I looked it up. The only place left accepting applications was Langara. Langara has a great long-standing program.
Yeah.
I sort of applied, and you had to take sort of a skills and knowledge sort of test. They kind of had because I guess they had a lot of people applying, and it was people both with degrees and also people without degrees. They had the two different programs that they'd end up overlapping. And the day I had wrote my test was Game 5 of Canucks Blackhawks, which the Blackhawks won, I think 5-0. If I remember.
Yeah, they smoked us. Yes,
terrible. But the guy that was running the invigilator for the exam was this guy named Ed Hensel, who became one of my favorite instructors, and I'm still in touch with. And Ed was actually basically said, okay, guys, I know that a lot of you are probably interested in the game. I will put the score up on the board, but I won't say anything. And if you don't want to know, don't look up when I say, well, here's what the score is. And as things progressed, it was one of those ones where, because it kept getting worse and worse. And so we're trying to do our thing, and everyone goes, okay, update. And people, guys are trying to, but you'd start hearing these gasps. Oh, people not trying to say anything, but they couldn't help themselves. Anyway, so there you are. Anyway, I did that program. Program was awesome. It's still running. I highly recommend. The training was perfect for me. I mean, not everybody who wants to become a journalist needs to go to journalism school, but it was great for me. Sort of who I was, kind of gave me a bit of discipline in terms of how I needed to learn how to write and sort of editing and understanding of how to tell, really honestly, how to tell a story. I'd done a history degree. I thought I knew how to tell a story, but I didn't have a clue. So that was great for me. And then I sort of freelanced for a couple of years while I was able to keep teaching. So I was teaching as a sub in Vancouver and Richmond, and then I got to know Eric Rolfson, who was my first boss at the province, now works at UBC. I knew a little bit from the old days of online Canucks chat, because there used to be I guess it still exists. There was on Usenet, there was a Canucks news group that way back when.
Usenet, anyone under 30 doesn't know what we're talking about, right?
Having a clue. Anyway, so I used to do that. I quite enjoyed it. And there's a few people on Twitter that I still know through that.
Awesome.
And anyway, but Eric was there, and I got to know Paul Chapman, who's still my boss, a little bit just through Twitter, because he's always been very active on there. He always appreciated, I think, the way to engage with that. And of course, he was also working for 1040 in those days. So just kind of, I think I I mean, I was working. I was writing Canucks Army as well, and I approached the province with starting a rugby blog, because in those days they were still sort of bringing community people in. They couldn't pay me. They were honest up front. They're like, can't pay you.
Yeah.
But we can help you get into stuff. And, you know, if we ever like anything you do, we put it in the paper, you'll get paid for that. And they were very upfront, and that was fine. And I did that. And I think it's just the whole sort of collection of knowing those guys and kind of the work I put in. Awesome. And I think I wrote the best cover letter I've ever written in my life when I applied. And and ended up with this job. Started July 2nd, 2013.
Wow. So awesome.
Yeah, managed to stay along there. Now, you know, last how many years is this? 3 years I've been covering the Canucks.
Very good.
You know,
well, as a youth worker, thank you for all you did in the high schools, you know, teaching, and as a parent, of course, and of course, as a Canucks vlogger, I, you know, you're one of the first people I go to when I'm researching and looking for stuff. So just before I press record, you told me you had a nice chat with now ex-Canuck.
That's you buttering me up.
No need to butter. You had a chat with an ex-Canuck, and your story has probably come out by the time people are watching this. Yeah.
It's it should be up, I think, by the time this video comes out. I talked to Antoine Roussel last week just about the trade, and you know, his sort of I mean, he's a good guy. Like I think as a bunch of us said on Twitter, those of us in the media, and clearly from fan reaction, you know, he is what he seems to be. You know, he's a guy that's just who's worked very hard to make the NHL. I think feels very fortunate about, you know, the sort of way life has played out for him through hard work and having some natural talent, obviously, because you need both most of the time. And just a good dude. And, you know, just sort of talked about, you know, how important it was for him to engage with fans and thinking about, you know, what it's like for them to meet a hockey player. You know, you know, I mean, which, you know, always struck me because, you know, he was the enthusiasm he always had talking about, like Alex Burrows. Alex Burrows is his hero, you know, and they're not, you know, Burrows and I are the same age. So he's, you know, we're 40, and Antoine, I think, is 30 or 31. So, you know, it's not like, it's not like this. Yeah. Right. But that's how it worked. You know, like he was you know, basically, you know, Burrows made the NHL while he was still a junior hockey player, you know, and he kind of became a junior hockey player almost by accident. That wasn't what he thought he was going to be. And, you know, now he's done, you know, worked very hard, and, you know, made it, and he's getting paid really well, and he knows it. You know, so just, you know, nice chat with a good guy, one of the good guys in hockey. And you know, I think a little insight. I mean, a crazy part, you know, in the middle of what turns out is going to be actually a crazy summer. Not only has he been traded, but, you know, so he has to go find a house. But, you know, he said yes to France for their Olympic qualification hopes. So he's going to have to spend, you know, a large part of August in Europe, because he's going to go over there. I think I'm trying to remember the time, like it might even be the end of this week. I need to go look it up. But basically, they're having like a camp in France to get all the guys together. Then I think he's coming back. Then they go to Belgium. Then they go to Latvia. It's somewhere along the way. Basically, they're quarantining all the way along the way, and, you know, trying to win this tournament. It's you know, the way they've set up for the, you know, for the Winter Olympics is there's a couple sort of final qualification tournaments, and so they, you know, France is in with in Latvia, and you know, he said, what the heck, this is my chance. This is my chance to do it. I mean, he hasn't played a ton for France in his life just because of life, you know, life has worked out. But he is one of those guys that, you know, when his homeland calls, he's a guy that's there.
Wow, that's cool. I'm looking forward to reading it. So everyone out there watching this, make sure you check out you'll see it posted on PJ's Rising Action on his Twitter account.
And the province.com.
Of course. Yeah, I was telling you, actually, of all the Canucks players, I've been blessed to meet many of them volunteering at things, but Antoine Roussel was the one guy who actually remembered my name from year to year at the golf tournament. So I hear what you're saying. Yeah. You know, yeah, he did.
That's awesome.
3 years ago, he just hurt his knee, or no, 3 years ago, he played in the golf tournament. And then the next year he was rehabbing. So he didn't play the golf tournament, but he remembered my name from the previous year. So just a little small story, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, somebody warned you about him. Probably. They probably said, oh, there's Clay again. What's his name? Clay? Yeah. Oh, I like him.
Exactly. And it's funny you mentioned that, as not only do I want to read that story, PJ, but you talk about how much he appreciates the game, his opportunity. Yet, unfortunately, maybe for Canucks fans, he became a number. He became $3 million Antoine Roussel. So let's talk about the off season. When you sit back, actually, before I get to that, really quickly, PH WA, Professional Hockey Writers Association.
That's right.
You are the chairperson for, is it a chapter or a novel?
Yeah, the
or
Vancouver
what is it?
chapter. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm the Vancouver chapter chair.
Right. So all we would know is that you get to vote on awards. What's one other cool thing you get to do?
Yeah, I mean, one of the, there's sort of a dozen of us that are members of here. One of the things I've been trying to do is bulk up our membership because, it's a new age and there's some guys that cover the team that I think deserve it. It's supposed to be, it's a bit of recognition. It's a bit of a club, but it's, it's basically saying, no, this is the people who cover the team. And it's just, we're sort of, a bit of a kind of a collective front that way. And
cool.
so bringing in guys like Daniel Wagner from Passos Bulis, Rob Williams, Daily Hive, the guys from Canucks Arby are going to join this year.
Good.
Carol Schramm, who Carol went and covered the bubble last year, was there for the New York Times, and she works for a bunch of places, but these are voices that people pay attention to. And
awesome. Let me know if they start admitting vloggers.
Well, you need to write somewhere. Literally,
dang it.
There was, that's something that we do. You do actually have to be writing, like, even though there's people, and I mean, that was something I was always encouraging, especially when Jeff Patterson started writing about the team, because he would write for the TSN website.
Right, his takeaways.
He joined in this year. And normally, but the other thing is, not every year, not everyone gets a vote. Like, not every member gets a vote. They generally sort of wait to see. So I didn't get a vote my first year. I got a vote the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And then of course this year, because we saw so little of the league, they kind of really cut back on the list of voters. Yeah. So a guy like J-Pat didn't have a vote this year, which is too bad, because the guy watches so much hockey, so much about the league. I mean, it is a bit of a kind of recognition. There'll be more of us voting next year. Yeah. But I don't think Jeff in his new role with Sekeres and Price is going to be writing all that much. So he may actually prove to be ineligible. So, like, an example of a guy that it is a funny, it is a bit of a funny line, but that's kind of what we say, because there is, in the end, there are other organizations, but our thing is about you may do other things, but you are writing about the team on a sort of a, not necessarily daily, but regular basis.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting group, and it's sort of one of those ones. It is a bit like being. It's actually no, it's not as bad as being Strata president. It's not a job that no one wants, but it's kind of my turn, and I've done it for a couple of years now, and we'll see where it goes. I mean, I took it over two seasons ago, because Kuz had been the guy, and Kuz had been doing it forever. And he was kind of like, enough of this. I don't want to do this anymore. It's like, fine, I don't mind doing it. So and obviously this year was difficult. We had to, at one point, we kind of put our kind of stood up and said, decision by the Canucks ownership, Canucks management made a decision to close practices basically on their own, not even discussing it with us, not even sort of leaning on us to be professional in how we cover the team, but essentially saying, "Oh, you guys are going to embarrass the players," which just was completely unfair and unreasonable. And so we felt it was important to make a statement about it and saying this, because in the end, like, the rules are that we get to watch practice and document what happens. But there is an expectation we're going to be professional. It literally says professional hockey writers. We're not, in the end. So, and we generally have always had a good relationship with the Canucks on the whole. And so that is what it's about. I mean, I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, you're a bunch of whiners." Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but. You know what? And you're right. It is just sports, but that's the point. It's just sports. Like, what are you worried about? So, I think it was a bit of a political grandstand from the others. From it wasn't the players that made this call. The players had no issue with what we were doing, and it was a top level decision that was made. And I do remember that. See how it plays out. Hopefully, it doesn't happen again.
Well, just add it to the list of crazy, unexpected things that happen.
Exactly.
This season. I love your Strata Council president analogy, PJ, because I'm sitting here in my backyard as part of a 12-unit, complex in Richmond, and we're only the original owners left 17 years later, which is cool. But then I'm not president, but that makes I'm basically parking police. I'm the grumpy old man now who walks around the complex, making sure everyone's parked in the right spot.
Really? Oh man.
Yeah. I know. Not my finest moment. Okay, so we hinted at it with Roussel. Let's talk about. We won't go move by move, but as a whole, both as a fan, as a writer, I'm sure it's giving you a lot to write about. What do you think of what the Canucks and Jim Benning have done over the past 3 weeks?
Well, a lot. You know, I mean, kudos on Benning for delivering on what he said he wanted to be, because he'd said in the past he wanted to be aggressive, but that hadn't always necessarily panned out.
Yeah.
He certainly was aggressive. You know, he's remade his team. He's shuffled some pieces around. You know, I mean, we came out of last season saying there's no way they can come back with the same defense. So certainly he's remade the defense. You know, we'll have to see if the different mix delivers different results. It's a big bet on Oliver Ekman-Larsson, obviously, to be a player he once was, but who has struggled, you know, in the last couple of years just because of injury. Maybe the coach's playing styles play some factor into it. I mean, players get old. He's 30, you know, 30 is, you know,
you're 40. I'm 47.
You know, like, you know, we'd love to be 30 again. You know what I mean? But you know, the reality is with hockey players is that it's a dangerous number.
Yeah.
You know, I remind you about what happened with Louis Eriksson, who was 30 when he signed his contract and quickly 31.
Wow.
And, you know, nosedived almost immediately. I mean, he wasn't bad his first year, but, you know, he wasn't a $6 million hockey player. And, you know, and that's a forward. Defensemen need their skating more than forwards do. And so that is a big worry. I mean, the Canucks know it, right? Like, they know they've made a big bet. You talk to them about it, and they're like, yeah, we get it. But they needed to change something around. You know, so that, you know, and I mean, Jim Benning said, we think he can be our number one defenseman. I mean, that's bold. We'll see. So there's that one part. Connor Garland's a great player. That is, if you're looking for a win in this equation, he's the big win. Yeah. You know, in the old sort of assessment is like, who got the best player? Well, Connor Garland is clearly the best player in this trade. Now he's a Vancouver Canuck. So if you assess it on those terms, they won. They also got out from under, you know, 3 terrible contracts in the end. Players, you know, like Roussel. You know, Roussel himself admitted, he said, you know, he didn't play well. He didn't produce. He was there to produce. He didn't score enough points. He's like, I got paid a lot of money and I wasn't playing well enough. Or he wasn't producing well enough. Yeah. You know, Jay Beagle, good guy, but like, you know, in the end, as has been discussed many, many times, you know, you shouldn't be signing a 4th line center for a long-term deal. Like, that's just ridiculous. So they admittedly have reshaped things. The forward group certainly is improved. They had to sacrifice another 1st-round pick, which, you know, I think in the long run, you need to be thinking big picture. You know, that's going to be, again, challenging for this team in the long run. It's a bet on this year. I think they, you know, more than ever are realizing, you know, you look at the fact that not only are they trying to re-sign Pettersson and Hughes, but like next year, Brock Besser's going to need a new contract. Well, Horvat's going to need a new contract. What are you thinking about those guys? Like, what are their futures going to be? You have to start being ruthless in this kind of thing. And so to me, that's the next big test, no matter who's in charge, whether it's Jim Benning because they made the playoffs or not, or he's not because they missed the playoffs. You know, whoever's in charge, dealing with, you know, the owner who likes to see himself being and sort of, you know, puff his chest out, being kind of a big dog around the league, which is, I think, you know, not surprising. You know, billionaires make money and they want to be seen as being on top. And that's why you own sports teams. You know, so from that standpoint, it's understandable. Again, like I said, I don't necessarily think the approach has been the wisest. But you know, there was an effort to make a team that was certainly better than last year's. I mean, last year the bar was so low. They went into the season with budget considerations as a huge factor in their process, right? Like they, you know, as ridiculous as the Toffoli non-signing was, that's just one of many things. They just didn't. They built a team. You know, Travis Hamonic, don't forget, could have been signed way earlier, but he was, you know, that was a late signing. It was basically because Travis Green finally convinced ownership that this was a player they needed. Jim Benning, you know, the same thing. He basically said, no, we need, you know, they would have added more guys. They wanted to re-sign Troy Stetcher, but ownership, you know, they blocked that. They wanted to buy, you know, I think there was a buyout they wanted to exercise. They didn't get to buy out, you know, like money was a huge mitigating loss was a huge factor in last season in the decision, not in the sort of really sort of, you know, obviously the coach and management talked about playoffs and players talked about playoffs, but in the end, it was very much about mitigating loss because they didn't think they were going to have fans in the stands, and they got through it. So
absolutely.
I mean, what, I'm not a huge fan of it. I still think you need to. I think especially when you put community leader in your bio, you want to lead the community. You should be looking after your community, and ownership. I've been clear on this before. I don't agree with how ownership treated their staff.
Yeah.
Even though, especially the ones that remained, given they let everybody else go, that to me is far bigger. That speaks a lot more to sort of what your approach is to the overall game, what your game plan is. And as Ray Ferraro has said more than once, this is the no plan, and I think it continues to be that. I mean, you can try to make teams and see how things go against the wall, but if you don't really have a kind of big picture sort of notion of where you want to end up, what you want to be, what your team will look like, you're constantly getting yourself into pickles, and this team has been running into one pickle after another.
Oh, great insight there, PJ. So we don't have time, and we won't go through the entire lineup, but we kind of know what the forwards are going to look like, give or take one player. We know who's set at goal. I'm curious, though. Let's presume Rathbone makes the team. Let's presume it's not Juolevi, Schenn, or Hunt. Let's say your top six are some sort of Ekman-Larsson, Hughes, Rathbone on the left, Myers, and then Pullman and Hamonic on the right. Now that's 3 of 6 guys that are left of Hughes, Myers, and Hamonic, but 3 new guys. So it's going to be interesting if it were, and I don't know much about Pullman, admittedly. I know more about the other 5 guys, but I've seen arguments and I've seen discussions of you could put Pullman with Ekman-Larsson and shut him down.
I think that's where he's going to go.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you keep Hughes and Hamonic together and you try Pullman with Ekman-Larsson?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Pullman sign. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Pullman signing. I'm not going to lie. I mean, he's a big guy who can skate a little bit. But as soon as when I looked at him immediately, I'm like, he had 2 penalty minutes last year. I'm like, oh God, this is going to be another Chris Tanev comparison. It's unfair to the player. It's like, what? Like, be fair to his talents are.
Yes.
And it's a bit like Tyler Myers. Be fair to the talents are. Like, the guy, Tyler Myers has skills. He's not a very good defender, but he's a good guy moving the puck up the ice. He's handy on offense.
Yeah.
So play him as such. But that's been consistently been a problem with Jim Benning, is that there's sort of mediocre assessment of defensemen. And pretty good at picking out forwards. Like let's there obviously been some glaring mistakes, but there have been some interesting bets on players over the years, and but there's never been sort of bets that really paid off on the blue line. And Pullman, it's kind of amazing that you're gonna, I was talking to someone about it, I think who had watched Pullman a lot over the years, and he didn't realize initially what the contract was, and he goes, wait, what? They signed him for that much, for that long?
You had to tell your buddy role.
So it's a little bit like overcompensating for something that so it's going to be a challenge. It is a huge bet that he and Larsson can be these kind of mini innings munching guys in a way that the recent record doesn't suggest they can do it. Again, it's the kind of criticism where I hope I'm wrong, because I'd much rather cover a winning hockey team than a losing hockey team.
Me too.
To be clear, that's it. But I mean, that's my job, is to sort of sit back and be what's realistic. Hughes and Hamonic, I think Hamonic, he got better as the season went along. Terrible start, obviously, because he started from behind the 8 ball, then he got hurt. Actually, that was one of the things that Roussel and I talked about. He just said that schedule is crazy. He said, I hope we never see that again. 4 games in a week after week, is just not sustainable, especially early on. And, so Hamonic suffered from that. And I would say, that is going to be a challenge. Hughes needs to be better. Hughes didn't have a great year. Never took a dodge. Never, I asked him again, even at the end of the season, were you ever injured? He said no. But there were stretches where, like, pretty sure he's dealing with something. Just from how he'd performed before. So not only do you look at next season, okay, how does he look? How does he perform healthy again, fully healthy again? A chance to actually rest a little bit, not play as crazy a schedule as last season was. But can he actually, I mean, I think he also got scouted out a little bit. Like defensively, he had some issues. So can he improve as a defensive player? So I think those are important things to recognize. And, your third pair is Rathbone, probably Myers. Like, I think actually that could turn out to be a handy kind of, soft minutes pairing. Rathbone has a long way to go, but he's coming from a position where he's gotten better every year. And I thought it was an interesting point when we talked to Trent Cull a couple of weeks ago. He sort of said, listen, Jack, he's kind of amazing. He's like, we talk how little Mike DiPietro played the last year. He's like, let's talk how little Jack Rathbone's actually played in the last 3 years, which isn't an invalid point. Like, he's played like 100 games, which is like half as many games as he would have played if, say, he'd been like a WHL player. And I'm not necessarily saying that playing that many games is better, because one of the arguments the college guys often give to you is that because they don't play as much, they get more time to actually prepare themselves physically. They get to spend time in the gym, really learn the ins and outs of hockey and practice a lot, prepare themselves a lot better than I think major junior players do. Major junior players, it's kind of a bit of a battle of attrition and almost a bit of force of will getting through as well. Obviously having talent. But I think Rathbone, he is the kind of guy that you look at the way they handle the season. They got him a bunch of extra practice time as a taxi squad player. Then they sent him in Utica. They got him a bunch of games in Utica, and then they brought him to the NHL. And he got some games in the NHL. It was kind of a warp speed, condensed version of what you often see with players coming out of college. Like, think about Ryan Kessler. When Ryan Kessler first came to the NHL, he was all 20 years old. I think he'd had 2 seasons of college hockey, 1 season of college hockey, spent the first half of the season in the minors to learn the game, and then basically became an NHL player the second half of the season. And the kind of skill set and talent and drive, in similar terms, obviously Rathbone is a defenseman, but I think there's a similar arc there in terms of his ability to make the big step up. So we'll see how the season starts. Entirely possible that he ends up being on a bit of a shuttle and he just starts the year in Abbotsford and then gets his way into the NHL. But a player who has all the skills and sort of abilities to become a handy, useful NHL defenseman. One of the few the Canucks have in their system. Let's be honest. But a guy that we ranked as our, the province. I did a top 10, and I go and talk to a bunch of people who watch young players a lot more than I do and get a sense of where they are in their list. And, pretty much consensus was behind Podkolzin, and he's the next best guy.
Wow.
Yeah. So, there's something there. There's certainly, I think that's a pairing that's going to be the least of your worries. It's the other two, sort of how they manage their minutes. Honestly, that's kind of where the Canucks is. Along with Thatcher Demko, actually being able to repeat, sort of his best moments, because let's not forget, he was pretty terrible to start the season this year. Had an incredible March, and that was they drove that playoff, that sort of that winning streak, that playoff drive that they had before they all got sick. So that's something they need more of, and obviously, as we know, did great in the bubble last year. So those are the two things I think that really stand out, is that you need those top 2 defense pairings to really pan out in the way they want them to, and you need your goalie to stand on his head again.
Well said. By my quick calculations, PJ, you've thrown Michael Furlan's LTIR effect. Canucks have about 19.5 million for the 4 RFAs, right? Pettersson, Hughes, Dickinson. And Juolevi. Juolevi. Any concerns for Canucks fans given the contracts of the big 2?
I mooted it ages ago. I was one of the first people to kind of point out, like, an offer sheet is possible. It's tricky. The Canucks still have room, obviously, to deal with it. It's challenging, though. There's no doubt about it. Like, if a team really wanted to be predatory, they could come in to bring something in big, even just to mess with the Canucks' cap, because Benning has said he's going to match. I don't think it happens, though. They're so rare, especially a player like this. They're so rare for them to happen. I think Seattle would have been smart to actually throw a boatload of money at him. Structured in a way that was smart, just to spring him. But it's hard. It's really hard. So I think more than anything, it's look at the Besser situation. Besser didn't sign until after training camp started in 2019, right?
Good point.
So I think there's a decent chance of that.
Even Horvat, right? Horvat the year before that also, I remember it was
it's just everything's a bit of a grind.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I do think it is a bit of a representation of where the NHL is going. This is very much more and more a player-driven league. The players set the agenda. Maybe not quite to the degree the NBA is, but not far off anymore. Their player power is a lot more. I mean, you look at the Eichel situation in Buffalo. I think more and more we're seeing that, and that's something I know the NHL makes the NHL as a whole very nervous. They really want to believe in sort of certain cost, certainty. They talk about cost certainty, right? That's why they had the salary cap in the first place, because they were trying to kind of get a little more control of the situation, dial up their opportunities to make a bit more revenue, a bit more money, keep a bit more money for themselves. I think you're going to see more and more players really trying to punch within the system and make things work in their favor as best they can.
Right.
And so we'll see. I mean, there's a lot. It's going to be interesting times on the player side. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Mike Gillis does take over the NHLPA, for instance. Because if he does, he's long been an outspoken critic of the salary cap, and certainly he was when he was a player agent. He would.
Of course, yeah.
And he's just a guy that really wants to move the game forward, and always, I think, been even when he was a GM, like that was kind of what he tried to be, was a player-centered person.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the future of the game, and what Pettersson and Hughes are pushing for is very much, sort of believing in what's best for them, but also but with the sort of side belief that what's best for them becomes what's best for the team, because the team knows how important they both are, right? Like, right. You're not your number one defenseman, your number one center, right?
Yeah.
Everyone knows how important they are. They know it, and that's fine.
Yes.
So we'll see how things play out here, but I don't think there's any reason to think it won't play out the way Canucks fans want it to play out, which is that both those players are playing the opening night against the
whoever we're playing against on October 13th. Yeah.
I don't even remember. I know I wrote
Edmonton,
it.
LA?
Edmonton. Is it Edmonton?
Yeah.
I think
in Edmonton, right?
They're a 6-game road trip to start the season. And then they play and the last game is against the Kraken. The Kraken's the first home game.
Their home game, yeah.
There you go. Then they open the preseason against the Kraken. Anyway, there we go. Yeah.
And then I'll get to see you in person instead of you hearing me yelling in an empty arena that I got in trouble for. But that's for another.
Did you get in trouble?
Well, I'll tell you about that after after press stop. Yeah.
Clay.
Okay. Anyways, I got one other.
Did we all write you out because we were tweeting about it?
It wasn't just you. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
One last question, then we'll get to our rapid fire and wrap up. I really appreciate it in the province, PJ, how you guys every summer kind of do your off-season rankings of Canucks prospects, not including Podkolzin and Rathbone, because we presume those guys will make the opening night roster. Give us one player that Canucks fans should be excited about, whether they got drafted him this year or it's someone who's been in our system for a few years.
I think I've already mentioned it. I think Mike DiPietro is the guy to look for. I mean, they've obviously got Halak in short term, but I mean, and the plan. I mean, this is a reason to go to Abbotsford. I think because you're going to go out and you're going to see a lot of Mike DiPietro. When I talked to Ryan Johnston a few weeks ago, he said no. The plan is to get him 50+ games, which is wild because most the AHL schedule makes it really hard. But the fact here, the one thing I think is different this time around is that, unlike in the North Division, the thing to understand about the AHL is that basically the teams write their own schedules, and they basically don't leave their division. So there's no road trips to go play the Milwaukee Admirals or whatever,
Bridgeport, whatever.
There'll be no return to Utica to play the new Utica Condomats who are now with the Devils.
Right.
There's no trip to Bridgeport, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, but they're playing, basically the Pacific Division, which is mostly in California, with a couple exceptions.
Yeah.
And it also, unlike the North Division, there are no 3 games in 3 nights scenario or 2.5 days. Like, because a lot of times you'll play Friday, Saturday night, and then Sunday afternoon, which is just bananas. But you know, you're going to be playing, you know, maybe Friday, Saturday. You'll be playing Friday, Sunday, or Thursday. It's a little more manageable. So I think we're going to see a lot of DiPietro this year. Cool. So yeah, you know, he's just, his character and his attitude are everything you want in a player.
Yeah.
You know, he's had so much go on in his life. You know, and he's just a fascinating. I mean, I would be fascinated to see you and him have a conversation to see who actually came out as most positive, because you know, it might be one of those ones where like an actual singularity forms, and that's the end of your series.
Check this out, Mikey DiPietro.
Jeez, who are you, Rick Dollywall? Oh, yeah.
Trying to combine, but never mind.
Yeah.
That was not great.
Yeah, it was terrible. Just like I said, I thought you were Dollywall trying to pronounce the name. But anyway, that's the guy. To me, he's the next guy. There's some. Cole Lind was our number 4 guy. Now, of course, he's gone.
Yeah.
You know, Jet Wu has potential, certainly.
Yeah.
You know, big year for him for sure.
Sure. But you're right. It's not looking as
the Belarusian kid. The Belarusian kid is actually interesting. I think people kind of were like, think he was maybe drafted a bit high. You know, he's a guy that really should have gone in the 3rd or 4th round, but of course, Canucks didn't have a 3rd or 4th round pick, but they really liked him.
Yeah.
A lot of skills, a lot of swagger. But I think the Canucks' preference is that he goes to the Q. Yeah. Just to kind of get a, because I mean, he basically was playing the Belarusian Junior League, and it's crap.
Right.
You know, there's a reason why Belarus, for a brief window, I think was kind of like, oh yeah, they're kind of an interesting outsider kind of hockey nation, but they're just regressed. Like, they're just not very good. There's not a lot of Belarusian players come out anymore, and he's a bit of an exception. So, but yeah, lots of talent, lots of swagger. So he could be interesting, certainly. I think he will immediately appear reasonably pretty high on our list this season. So awesome. Yeah.
Great. Okay, cool. So let's wrap up, PJ. 5 rapid fire questions called the 5-hole for obvious reasons. Number 1, what's the one sport that you were excelled most at growing up, or even now? Or
I guess it's rugby.
Cool.
I played rugby in high school and then played at UBC and a bit of men's rugby afterwards. But yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, I guess it was rugby. I played hockey and baseball as well, but rugby, I think in the end probably was one I did the best at.
And my kids and I were watching the sevens in the
there you
Olympics.
Go.
It is crazy, man. It is crazy.
Sport. It's great.
Yeah. One deke though is pretty exciting. It's like running to it's pretty cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Number 2, starting a team from scratch. And you kind of hinted at this 5 minutes ago. Starting a team from scratch. You taking Pettersson or Hughes?
I think I'm taking Pettersson.
Yeah.
Just because Pettersson's the more complete player at this point. Just as a back, you know, we know about his ability as a back checker, his desire to win. I mean, Hughes has an incredible desire to win. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But we've seen just a little bit more from Pettersson to this point.
Fair enough. Number 3, you won't offend me because I'm half of each. Japanese food or Chinese food?
Ooh, that's you know what? To be honest, I think I have to go Chinese food just because I've liked it for longer.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we weren't a big like sushi family. We ate tons of Chinese food. We're a big, but as an adult, you know, obviously I've come around. You know, I enjoy sushi as well, but no, Chinese food.
Very good. Number 4, related. This guy's picking up the tab for dinner. So it's basically, who do you want to spend 2 hours with? Green, Benning, or Aquilini?
Oh, Travis Green, because I've already. I mean, I mean, because I've had conversations with Travis. I know. I mean, Travis. Just interesting. Just a guy who's been in a lot of places, been around the league.
Yeah.
You know, Travis Green.
Cool. And lastly, and take a minute or 2 if you need to, PJ, to think of your answer. What's one thing that a lot of people don't know about you that obviously you're willing to share with a few hundred viewers, but what's one thing that people don't know about Patrick Johnston?
Geez. I broke my nose a whole bunch playing rugby. How about that? I had a nose job. They straightened my nose out. This is like 15 years ago, but
well, that's good. Maybe I should have done that when I was little.
But
wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
Does that work?
But you broken it more than once?
Oh yeah. I mean, I broke it. I'm trying to think. I first broke it playing at UBC. Oh. I was in a tackle. Caught somebody's elbow.
Yeah.
was on the ground in the bottom of a rock, like when the ball's on the ground and everyone's pushing over.
So easy to catch an errant elbow, I guess, right? In those,
yeah. And it was funny. It was one of those ones where it was like, it was pouring rain. It was a really rainy day. And I remember I was lying here and I'm like, why is the rain so warm? And it was just because there was blood just gushing across my face. And I get up and the trainer comes out and looks at me and goes, holy wow. And of course we were playing at UBC, but in that season, normally you'd have like 2 or 3 trainers that were like from the physio program, stuff like that.
Yeah. We
only had one that day. And our coach looked at me, Spence McTavish, who's a legend.
Yes.
And our trainer's like, well, I got to take him to the hospital. And he goes, no, because we have other players here. And of course, the UBC hospital is just down the road.
Yes.
So Spence said, put your coat on. He's a big boy. Put your coat on. It was so old school. So I walked down to
you walked yourself to the hospital.
Walked myself down to the UBC Emerge. And I walked in and they looked at me and they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, I think maybe I broke my nose. And they're like, okay. And they're like, did you come by yourself? I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh, all right. And so I waited for a while. They looked at my nose. It was so swollen they couldn't actually tell. But anyway, they stopped the bleeding and whatever. But that was the beginning of it. And then I had a couple of years later, basically I had a season where like basically every game was just, and so eventually it was sort of like here. And
what a visual. Thank you.
And so my family doctor, who was an old time rugby player himself, and who had long said, don't get it fixed until you stop playing. He looked and he goes, yeah, I probably should get that fixed.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. PJ, this has been awesome. And I think, I can speak on behalf of everyone that comes to my channel regularly, that read your stuff and hear you on the radio and stuff like that. Thank you for all you're doing. And hopefully you are covering and having fun covering a much more exciting team and a more successful team this season.
Yeah.
So people can follow you where on Twitter?
At Rising Action. Yeah. And of course at the Province in the Sun.
Awesome.
Online and in print.
Yes.
Oh, and I've got an Instagram at Patty J on the road, which obviously hasn't been too active lately, but
I do like your tie pictures. Yes.
Yeah, I do. I sort of try to show people, and I'm trying to kind of keep it light and show people what's going on behind the scenes.
Well, now that sorry, go ahead. Now that
I was going to say, it was, the first couple of years obviously was an endless competition with JPAT, because Jeff was always good. That's kind of what he was using his Instagram for too. But I guess I don't think Jeff's gonna be traveling this season, unfortunately. But
right.
So I've got to pick that up now.
Yeah, there you go.
When I travel, we still don't. Well, we'll see. Yeah, still don't know if we're still going to be traveling. But
cool. Well, let's get you, me, and Mike together, and we'll make fun of him for a couple hours soon. Yes.
Sounds
PJ,
good.
Thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
All right, bud. Take care.
All right, take care.